And so in Toby's case, he's been healed. I mean, through the therapy, through the intervention, it's amazing.
Lots of prayer was laid on them.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this at all related to autism?
You know, everyone says that because so many of the symptoms are similar. What I've been told is that autistic children all have some degree of this disorder, but that you can have this disorder and not be autistic.
Now, it's like the brain is not wired?
It's not.
Normally?
It's like it doesn't interpret sensory input the way it should. So some children have the opposite extreme, like I have a friend whose son doesn't really feel sensation. So they're very worried if he gets injured, he doesn't know he's hurt, and that's really scary. In my case, my son was afraid of crumbs, you know, because that feeling of something on his fingers, he couldn't stand it. Or he was afraid of clothing that had a button. You know, it was very extreme the other direction. So
Just curious, do you know how long ago this was diagnosed?
Well, it's a fairly new subset. I think, honestly, had Toby had this 10 years ago or 15 years ago, he probably would have been diagnosed as autistic. But he's clearly not, because he's fine. But they're saying it's fairly new, maybe within the last 8 or 10 years, that they've really been focusing on this as a therapy and as because they're seeing such wonderful results.
Now, I've mentioned to the viewers more than once, we ought to really pray for our researchers, our scientists.
Yeah.
Because they're unlocking a lot of mysteries, and I think as God allows them,
yes,
they can.
I would agree.
Okay, your father and then this situation, did it put any pressure on your marriage?
You know, I have the best husband, and I can honestly say it didn't, because my husband is
Work together on it, right?
It's
what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, he loves the Lord, and he loves me. And
these that walk out, you know, when there's an issue, and
yeah,
it's not unusual, especially when there's a child like this.
You are absolutely correct. That is so common, and I will say that my husband was absolutely my rock. I'll cry talking about my husband. He's wonderful, and
That's great.
Without God, I don't know how anybody would go through what we went through, and I give him the glory. But my husband was certainly a big part of why I could get through it.
I think that's such an important part of your testimony, just because of the feedback we receive on this program, whether it's a letter or an email or something about how families are just torn apart
it's true.
by these kinds of things, and I'm very thankful that you have a really happy ending on that one.
Well, and you know, one thing that we all said at our family, my larger family, not my little family, but my larger family, we saw in such a great way the Lord transformed our faith as a family, and we were all closer. And I really give a lot of that credit to my dad, because his attitude toward his suffering and his illness, he was so Christ-centered. And he would say, if everyone suffers, we're going to suffer. Let's not waste it. Let's learn what God has us to learn. Let's be transformed to be like him. And he was such an amazing, godly example of how to face trials that all of us were sort of like, well, if he can do it and he's got Lou Gehrig's disease, then certainly we can be faithful and look to the Lord. And the Lord was so faithful.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to and very thankful that the viewers will meet your mom, because she's coming in a few days. Suffice it to say, she wrote a book, and the family and other people say that this wonderful man, your father, not only taught the family how to live, but how to die. I've got your website up right now. We've had it up for a little while.
Okay.
If you want to go there and get some of this good music. But before we're finished, we're a little bit over time right now, but that's okay. After all this, the whole family went to Kenya.
We did.
Are you nuts?
You know, I heard that so much, and people were like, you took your son who can't wear clothes or eat food to Kenya, but he can now. Do both of those things.
The whole family.
Yeah, I was invited by Africa Inland Mission and World Vision, I work with World Vision, to go do a tour, and I said, you know, I would love to do that, but I do not leave my family that long. And they called back and said, well, why don't you just bring your family? And we went, well, why don't we then?
Right.
So we all went, and we had a week in the UK with Young Life UK, and then the rest of the month in Kenya, and it was just incredible.
And how old were the girls then?
When we were there, well, Rachel had her birthday there. She turned 8 while we were there.
What a wonderful,
yeah, and
wonderful
Rena's
experience.
10.
Well, you know, Jennifer, it's just such a refreshing delight to meet a young lady so sold out to the Lord, and He's allowed a lot of stuff into your life at a rather young age, and it's going to be interesting to see what He brings out of it.
Well, I said, everywhere I go now, I am struck. We, as the body of Christ, if we were sold out, I think we'd change our world, and that is.
You're right.
And that is my passion. I do a lot of speaking, and I want to go encourage people. You trust God. You go deep with God, and you wait and see what He'll do, because He is not going to leave you hanging.
No, He won't.
No.
And I would like to also remind you, while that information is up, that Jennifer, she does speak to all kinds of groups. I'm sure quite a few women's groups, though. And I so believe in women's groups. I've spoken for hundreds of them, and I just think so many times people come in with a discouraged, mundane life or whatever, and they leave changed. And I believe you would be too with Jennifer's story and the insights the Lord has given her. Stay with me. We have a couple things to say before we have to say goodbye.